The novel of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck is a celebrated piece of literature, but it's also almost as often as it's read, the use of racial profanity in the book is always questioned, asking if it belongs in the classroom at all. So Doug Reardon has more on why some experts believe more is gained from talking about this topic still than not.
We've been made aware of this concern, and it has triggered the process of us for examining our instructional practices for how we hold difficult conversations.
Steinbeck's classic novel of Mice and Men is almost 100 years old. Based in history, many of the African-American characters are often referred to as the N-word in the text.
The N-word hasn't gone away, still being used. But if we feel as though the use of the word is problematic, in which we should feel that way, then let's engage it. Let's not censor ourselves or shield ourselves away from the exploration of why the word has been used in the first place. It's not right. It's never been right. But it tells an honest story.
Professor Eric Washington at Calvin University and Nate Fowler of Lowell Area Schools want the focus to be on the context.
If we're teaching the book correctly, I don't think that's a problem in terms of spreading racism.
Of Mice and Men was one of the most challenged books in the early 21st century, but Fowler says it fits both their intentions as educators and state requirements for public schools.
Using materials like this afford teachers an opportunity to have conversations in their classrooms about race. They afford them the opportunities to see things from a different place and time, and just how society and how culture has changed and how it has evolved.
Both educators agree race should be addressed head-on in schools and at home.
I think the hard work has to be done by parents to say, look, this is literature. We have a good idea of what the author was intending here, but it's not licensed to just use the word and apply it to African Americans.
The question for some becomes, should Of Mice and Men still be in the classroom? These educators say absolutely.
I don't think it loses utility because we haven't exhausted our knowledge of history. We have not exhausted our knowledge of good literature and the different themes that were prevalent 100 years ago, still relevant today. So I don't think a good book uses its utility.
Washington says look beyond the text itself to the substance and the lessons it can teach, the new ideas, the new thoughts, and new experiences the literature can bring.
We have to have a good mix. Stories written by white authors in the past that tell more or less a white story, but we also have to have African-American authors who are telling African-American stories, Latino writers, Native American writers, women writers across the spectrum. Our canon has to be broad and wide.
One thing that we've recently tried to get better at, and as part of our improvement process, is just looking at through those materials through an equity lens as well. So making sure that students are able to see themselves in the materials that we use.
A constant conversation, not just between educator and student, but parents as well.
There has to be communication. Parents should have a voice.
Doug Reardon, Fox 17 News.
And both educators say it's important for parents to familiarize themselves with the material before diving into conversations about that literature. The same conversation Fowler says continues in his district when it comes to curriculum as we move forward as well.